All right, welcome to another episode of Mazecast. We're going to be talking about Room 25 tonight. Alex is with me as usual. Hey, Alex.
Hi.
All right, so let's go ahead and bring up a picture of 25 here. Okay, so 25 is a room that I bring up a lot of times when someone mentions a clue or interpretation in another room as being too easy. It's like, oh, it's too easy. That can't be right. Manson wouldn't do that. Oh, that's too simple, too straightforward. And the reason I bring up 25 all the time is because 25 seems to be the most simple and straightforward of the rooms clued in the maze. And it's really just as simple as take a look at this picture, or this series of pictures in the back with this fella who starts out with his eyes closed, looking kind of sleepy, restful. He starts to open his eyes as you go left to right. The picture gets darker, and then he starts to look terrified as he stares out at the camera finally at the end there. Well, it's as simple as the door over here, 34, where the bright light is and where the guy is calm, is the best door. And then down here at 35, where it's dark and the guy looks scared, is the worst door. And 13 is somewhere in between. And that's pretty much all there is to that. Um, that solves the room there. That's not to say that's all there is going on, but it does seem like the clue really is that straightforward in terms of pointing out which way you're supposed to go. Um, what were we going to say?
I just said absolutely.
Yeah. Some other things to mention here. Obviously, these signs are all in different stages of falling off the wall. There's one that has fallen off the wall and has a crown behind it. Not really sure what to make of that. We might make some reference to it when we go to the text of this room. Um, the signs are not simply different stages in a single progression of falling off the wall, though, which I think is important just to point out that this is different from, say, like the doors in room 5, where they're all in a series of opening and closing, like you could put them in an order. These aren't like that. If you look at the sign to 13, which is sort of hanging on by one nail at the bottom, but still pretty much upright, just kind of hanging down to the side, that's not in the same progression as 35 and 34, both of which are connected by both bottom nails, but falling over from the top. Um, so you can't really order them like that. I don't know what to make of the different ways that they're falling off there. It also exposes them to different amounts of light, and light seems to be sort of important in this room. But the best lit sign is number 13, which is not the correct door.
Well, I
Uh,
think it was. I always thought it was a progression from how far the sign has fallen off. So the one that's fallen off the most is the best, and then the whole theme of the room is motion, like from left to right, and then you have the motion of the signs falling off, like they're literally still falling off the walls, and it's sort of like the ones that have fallen off first is the best room, and then even more fall or less fallen off. 34 is like slightly more fallen off than 35, and then 13 is still on there, the lightest, and it's also the one that's not falling off at all, the worst. Like progression from. It's sort of like a temporal thing.
yeah, that's interesting. Putting them in that order. I mean, they don't form a progression in the sense that I meant, where you couldn't like string them together like a motion picture or something like you could the pictures on top. But you're right, they definitely are fallen off in different amounts. Where the sign that was over the crown, which comes from room 42, that's fallen all the way off. 34 is next closest to falling off, then 35, then 13. Although 13 is better to go to than 35. Um, but the thing is, it's strange that I don't know how you would know that following the progression on the top of the room goes from good to bad, like the first image is good and the last image is bad. But when you're looking at the progression of signs falling off the doors, the first one, the least fallen off, is the is wrong and the most fallen off is the best.
Yeah.
And really, the most fallen off you can't even take because of the crown. So
You might be able to, you can interpret that as fallen off the path. Fallen off
Yeah.
the path or something like that.
Well, it's interesting. Some other things that have been noted, each one of these doors has 6 boards nailed to it, except for the one in front of the crown door, which has 7. Not really sure what to make, if anything, of that. But it's strange because it seems so deliberate that each of the other doors has a set number of boards in it, and then that one just has an extra little board snuck in there. Kind of makes you want to do something with that math.
I would combine that with the 7 pictures of the guy.
And
Almost like you can trust that. I think somebody mentioned on The Abyss that the combination of the pictures going from light to dark and the room mirroring, that sort of light progression, means that you can trust that aspect of the clue.
okay.
That I got out of it, at least. Like I'm saying, combined with a door having 7 slats, you could say 3 and 4, 3 plus 4. You can't do that with any of you can't say 3 plus 5 because there's only 3 and 4, and you can't do 1 and 3. It's more of a numerical thing. I think Gentile would be more interested in that, but I'm just trying to tie it into what you said with the 7 slats.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I'm not totally sure what the 7 really adds to already having the 7 pictures and all, but there is at least a correspondence that's kind of interesting. Of course, we've got. Okay. Another thing to notice and not know what to do about is that the door to 35 is slightly open. I mentioned that that's kind of like, oh, we just lost the image there. Oh, there we go.
I'm gonna go to the text, but I can figure it out. There you go.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's okay. The door to 35 is open, and to me that sort of gives the impression of being kind of like sucked in the door as you go that way. The only reason I say that is because I guess I get kind of that feeling as you follow old Baldy there across the top of the paper, and he's getting enveloped in darkness. I kind of gives the feeling like he's being sucked into something, and then as you go across the room, it goes from light to dark, and then all of a sudden there's an open door with darkness behind it. So maybe that's another indicator of the 35 being a bad door. Although the thing is, there are tons of rooms in the maze that have just one open door like that, and I'm not sure what they mean. I think there's something going on with all these open doors in the maze, and they certainly are not. They're not always wrong. So I don't know what that stuff means. Maybe that's when we're tracking the guide through the maze. Maybe those half-open doors are going to help us. This is certainly a room that has one of those little side, like, sort of extraneous seeming clues that are about the identity of the guide, which I think we can go to the text now and talk about that.
Okay.
You can, well, whichever way you want it. You can leave the picture up, or you could go to the text. All right.
I don't think we've done this before. I don't think I put the text on the screen or anybody's put the text. So.
No, I don't think we usually do that. Okay. So, first sentence we've got a high room with the image of a crown on the wall for everyone to see now. What's been noted there is that the word crown is ambiguous, or sort of ambiguous. I mean, obviously there's just a picture of a crown on the wall, but crown also means one's head. And because we've got all these pictures of this bald guy, his skull's uncovered on the top there, it could mean that the image of the crown they're talking about is an image of the guy's head. And notably, where the guide says, for everyone to see now.
You think that relates to Top Hat?
Yeah. Well, at least potentially. Because the question is, why did it say for everyone to see now, as if it was covered up earlier?
Yeah.
Well, with the crown on the wall, it was covered up earlier, presumably by the sign that fell off.
Yeah.
With the guy on the wall, who's dressed in, looks like a tuxedo with a bow tie, which matches the attire of Top Hat, who we see back in 16 and 7. And then we see some other images of top-hatted people, and we see a top hat back in 18, where the top hat has actually been abandoned by its owner. Then we get to 25 here, and then we've got a guy in a tux with a bow tie, and he has no top hat. So it could just mean that, you know, his crown is now uncovered for people to see.
Yep.
Not that that helps us.
Possibly in the music room.
Yeah. Though one of my parents might be lowborn, the other was close to a king. This is the line that seems to be a clue to the identity of the guide more than anything to do with the room. Maybe it has something to do with the room, but it's at least very much an indication as to who the guide is. And any potential solution that we would offer as to who the guide's going to be, this is one of those lines it's going to have to account for. Like whatever people you want to throw out, you've got to have somebody who's lowborn and somebody who's close to a king. And of course, one of the big names we keep coming back to whenever we're talking about who the guide might be is the Minotaur. He fits this clue very well because, of course, one of his parents was a queen and his other parent was a bull. The bull could be considered lowborn in two senses. One, in that it's a bull, so it's pretty far from human nobility, but also it's a bull that was created by Poseidon and came out of the sea, which would make it sort of literally born down low. I mean, there's plenty of other mythological figures you could say to fit that, but the Minotaur seems to fit a lot, and that clue seems to fit well with the Minotaur. Do you have any other thoughts on that one?
Not really. Just I noticed that there's the word high and low here in the same paragraph. I'm not sure what that means, but I always seem to notice those things when he's talking about directional stuff, like he uses right more than once, or he's got two words that contradict each other in a sentence or whatnot.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. The high number, 35, is wrong, and the low number, 13, is wrong. I've heard somebody try to say something about being close to a king is somehow meant to disqualify the two doors that are next to the crown. Although I don't really see, even if you took that as a reference, I don't know how that would indicate that you should disqualify those two doors. I don't know. But yeah, there are some potential connections there between low and high, close to a king, and what's going on in the picture there. Next says, I've always felt at home here. Now, this is at the center of what Greg thinks the big solution is in this room, which is that this and then room 34 after it have to do with the comfort of the people in the room. And the reason he says that is because if you go to room 13, all right, the middle door from here, it says they weren't really comfortable here, and I knew why. In other words, the guests weren't comfortable there. If you go to room 35, the far right door, one of them tries to sit down on a couch, and it collapses on them. So they were not able to get comfortable there. But if you go to room 34, the correct door, it says, it was amazing how much more comfortable they felt in these surroundings. So Greg takes all those rooms together. The one room where they feel comfortable, he takes as an indication that you're going the right way, which I don't think is terrible.
I think it's, especially since he also says perhaps in another room at the end of the text.
Yeah, and this kind of ties together all the rooms that are connected to it, with the exception of 42. But you can't get back there. Yeah, I mean, you're not necessarily going to have all the pieces together to know that all those statements are made there, but eventually you will. And this kind of helps point you in the right direction if you're kind of going back and forth in the loop here. when you get to 34 and it says they're more comfortable here, and then as you go through 25 to some other rooms, suddenly they're not comfortable. Maybe that gives you an indication that something's going wrong here and you need to turn back.
Yeah, it wouldn't be out of character for Manson to disperse his clues in such a way.
Yeah.
Between 3 or 4 different rooms, maybe even.
Which door ought we take? They wanted to know. It's unusual, I guess, to insert them asking which door to take into the text. I mean, it's not. It happens in some other rooms. But what really sticks out to me here is the use of the word ought, which it's
What
not
can you
the
do with
most
it, though?
common word. What's that?
What can you do with it, though?
Well, I don't know, man. Other than the one solution that we've already got for this room, I don't know that we've got a lot to say about it. But it's using ought instead of should is interesting to me. Ought, of course, can mean 0 as well, but that doesn't really do anything for us.
Maybe in the sense that you should just go back because none of these doors are any good, really, because you just came off the path at 42.
Which door ought we take? Yeah, and the guide says, the guide, I rather brusquely indicated the 3 doors. Of course, there are only 3 doors you can go to, but it does seem kind of interesting that he says...
And brusquely.
Yeah, and there are 4 doors, and all the doors you can go to do have the number 3 in them. But again, that doesn't really clue you to any one of them. It just seems interesting that he refers to them as 3 doors when there are 4 doors. And the 3 you can take do have 3 in them. And he says, any of these is fine for my purposes. That's pretty unusual.
34 is the best option, right? Because then you can get to 10 and then 41.
Yeah, 34 is the best option.
You're pretty deep in the loop here now, right?
You're about midway through. You're actually not too far from 41. Back to the beginning of it. So I guess you're probably better than midway around at this point. You're going to go 25, 34, 10, 41. You're in there a ways, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, 35 is just bad because it's like eating up a room because you only have one way to go.
Yeah. Although, I mean, the thing is, through 13 or through 35, going to one of those doors doesn't really matter. You're going to end up having to come back to 25 to 34 eventually. And there are no entrances to the trap out there. So the guide may just be unusually honest with us here and say, it doesn't matter. For my purposes, it doesn't really matter which way you go. Because eventually you're going to have to come through this way and go back. It's really just a waste of your time to go there, but it doesn't help the guide get you trapped.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's echoed just by the clarity and ease of the, like, if you're like a newbie or something and you just see the guy looking terrified at 35, then that's really all you have to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, and in the next line, they were disconcerted at the apparent lack of clues, which I guess may be consistent with the fact that we don't have too much to say about this room. It seems like there's the one big clue and then a bunch of stuff we don't know what to do with.
It's pretty true. This is one of the most barren rooms in the maze. There's literally nothing on the floor other than
sign itself. Wall. Perhaps in another room, they said, leaving for... And we've already talked about how perhaps in another room may tie together those other rooms to suggest which way you should be going with the comfort clues that Greg noted. That's all I've got for room 25. Do you have any other thoughts on room 25?
Yeah, just some observations that there are no handles on the doors. They just seem to be like outhouse doors that you just kick down.
Yeah, that's true. This is a room where the inaccessible... Jesus Christ. This is a room where the inaccessible door doesn't have any kind of indication of why it's inaccessible. It doesn't have a missing doorknob or anything like that. And
I guess it's because it's too late, right? Because in a moment, 34 is going to be down, and 35 is going to be down, but they just came at the right moment that they can see these three signs.
maybe, yeah. I mean, it almost seems like the mere fact of the sign falling down is enough to make the door impossible to open. Which for us it is, readers of the puzzle book, but for them, the people that are in the maze, that's a little strange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Primitive look. Yeah, I got nothing else really.
All right.
Pay attention.
Shortest one on record.
And who is it sponsored by?
Oh, it's sponsored by Rogaine, 2% minoxidil topical solution. If old Top Hat had them, he'd have no reason to be terrified. All right, we'll catch you next time.